Welcome to the origin story. In December 2015, a group of prominent tech figures gathered to launch a new artificial intelligence research lab. Sam Altman, president of the legendary startup accelerator Y Combinator. Elon Musk, already running Tesla and SpaceX. Ilya Sutskever, one of the most respected AI researchers in the world. Greg Brockman, former CTO of Stripe. And several other top researchers, including Wojciech Zaremba and John Schulman. They called it OpenAI, and they set it up as a nonprofit. Their stated mission was to develop artificial general intelligence, AI systems that are generally smarter than humans, in a way that was safe and benefited all of humanity. They pledged over $1 billion in initial funding, though not all of it would ultimately be collected. The idea was radical. Keep the research open, free from corporate pressure, and ensure that if humanity was going to build something this powerful, it would not be controlled by a single company driven by profit. It was idealistic, it was ambitious, and within a few years, the reality of what it actually cost to build these systems would force them to make compromises that changed everything.
The financial reality hit OpenAI hard by 2018 and 2019. Training large AI models requires massive amounts of computing power, specifically thousands of high-end GPUs running for weeks or months at a time. The electricity bills alone can run into the millions. The hardware costs are staggering, and the talent costs are astronomical. Top AI researchers command salaries of $2 to $5 million a year, and OpenAI was competing for talent against Google, Meta, and Apple. A traditional nonprofit simply could not raise the kind of money needed to stay competitive. So in 2019, OpenAI did something unprecedented. They created a hybrid structure. They formed OpenAI, a capped profit entity that sat underneath the original nonprofit board. The idea was that investors could earn returns on their investment, but those returns were capped at 100 times the original investment. After that cap was reached, all remaining value would flow back to the nonprofit mission. It was creative corporate engineering, theoretically keeping the mission in charge while opening the door to real capital. Critics called it a betrayal of the original nonprofit vision. Supporters called it the only realistic path to building AGI. Either way, it set the stage for the most consequential technology partnership of the decade.
And that partnership was with Microsoft. Walk us through the Microsoft deal, because it fundamentally reshaped both companies and the entire technology industry.
The Microsoft partnership unfolded in two phases, and both were masterstrokes of corporate strategy. Phase 1 was the 2019 deal. Microsoft invested $1 billion into OpenAI, but the cash was almost secondary. The real value was infrastructure. Microsoft became OpenAI's exclusive cloud computing provider, and they did not just offer standard Azure services. They built custom supercomputers specifically designed for training OpenAI's models. Massive clusters of tens of thousands of GPUs connected by high-bandwidth networking, optimized specifically for the kind of parallel processing that large language model training demands. No other company in the world could have provided that level of bespoke computing infrastructure, and without it, GPT-4 would have been impossible to train. Phase 2 came in January 2023, immediately after ChatGPT exploded. Microsoft invested an additional sum reported to be around $10 billion in a multi-year deal. In exchange, Microsoft got the rights to embed OpenAI's models directly into its own products: Bing Search, Microsoft 365, GitHub Copilot, Azure AI Services. Microsoft also receives a significant share of OpenAI's profits until its total investment is recouped. For Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, this was the strategic play of a lifetime. In one move, he transformed Microsoft from a legacy enterprise software company into the infrastructure provider and distribution partner for the most important AI company on Earth. Microsoft's market cap has increased by over $1 trillion since the partnership began.
$1 trillion in market cap growth. That is an extraordinary return on a $10 billion bet. Now let us talk about the technology itself, because there is a remarkable irony at the heart of the ChatGPT story that most people do not know about. The irony is one of the greatest in modern technology history. The GPT in ChatGPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. That last word, transformer, refers to the foundational architecture that makes the entire system work. And it was not invented by OpenAI. It was invented by a team of 8 Google researchers in a 2017 paper with the now legendary title, "Attention is All You Need." The transformer architecture was a breakthrough because it solved a fundamental problem in natural language processing: how to understand the relationships between words across long stretches of text. Previous approaches process text sequentially, word by word, making it slow and causing the model to lose track of context over long passages.
The transformer introduced something called self-attention, which allows the model to look at an entire sequence of text simultaneously and learn which words are most relevant to each other, regardless of their position. Think of it as the difference between reading a book one word at a time through a keyhole versus seeing the entire page at once. Google published this research openly. OpenAI took it, scaled it up to an unprecedented degree, and built the GPT series. GPT-1 came in 2018, a proof of concept with 117 million parameters. GPT-2 in 2019 with 1.5 billion parameters. GPT-3 in 2020 with 175 billion parameters. Each generation was massively larger, trained on more data with more computing power. The scaling hypothesis, the bet that simply making models bigger and feeding them more data would produce emergent capabilities, paid off spectacularly.
But raw scale was only part of the story. The real breakthrough that turned GPT from an impressive autocomplete tool into ChatGPT, the conversational assistant, was a technique called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. Here is the problem it solved. Early GPT models were powerful but chaotic. They could generate remarkably fluent text, but they had no sense of what was helpful, appropriate, or accurate. They would ramble, generate toxic content, hallucinate facts, and ignore the user's actual intent. They were like a brilliant but undisciplined mind with no social awareness. RLHF changed that. OpenAI hired human workers, thousands of them, to interact with the AI and rate its responses. Was this response helpful or unhelpful? Was it accurate or inaccurate? Was it harmful or safe? This human feedback was used to train a separate reward model, an AI that learned to predict what humans would rate as a good response. Then, using reinforcement learning, the main GPT model was fine-tuned to maximize the reward model's scores. In effect, the AI learned to behave like a helpful, polite, and safe conversational partner by being rewarded for good behavior and penalized for bad behavior. It is an elegantly simple idea, but the execution was extraordinarily difficult and expensive. RLHF is the reason ChatGPT feels like talking to a knowledgeable assistant rather than a chaotic text generator. It was OpenAI's true secret weapon.
So Google invented the architecture. OpenAI scaled it up. RLHF tamed it into a useful assistant. But even with GPT-3 and the API available since 2020, it was primarily a developer tool. The general public had barely heard of it. Then came November 30th, 2022. Tell us about the launch of ChatGPT and what happened next.
From a business perspective, the ChatGPT launch is one of the most extraordinary events in the history of consumer technology. On November 30th, 2022, OpenAI took GPT 3.5, an upgraded version of their existing model, wrapped it in a simple, free-to-use chat interface, and released it to the public as a research preview. There was no marketing budget, no Super Bowl ad, no celebrity endorsement, no launch event, just a free web app with a text box. Within 5 days, it had 1 million users. Within 2 months, it reached 100 million active users, making it the fastest-growing consumer application in the history of the internet. For context, it took Instagram 2.5 years to reach 100 million users. TikTok took 9 months. ChatGPT did it in 60 days. The business impact was seismic. Google internally declared a code red, their highest level of strategic emergency, because for the first time in 20 years, a product was threatening their core search business. Microsoft moved immediately to integrate OpenAI's models into Bing, Office, and eventually every product they make. OpenAI's revenue went from effectively zero to an annual run rate exceeding $3 billion in roughly 2 years. Their latest funding round valued the company at over $80 billion. A nonprofit founded in 2015 with a mission to benefit humanity was now one of the most valuable private companies on Earth. Every major technology company on the planet, Google, Meta, Amazon, Apple, pivoted their entire strategy to compete with what OpenAI and Microsoft had unleashed. The AI arms race had begun.
And that is the OpenAI story, one of the most remarkable business narratives of our time. It starts in 2015 with a group of idealists who wanted to build artificial general intelligence for the benefit of humanity and keep it open and free. It nearly stalled when they realized the staggering cost of training frontier AI models. It pivoted when they created the capped profit structure that let them take real investment while theoretically maintaining the nonprofit mission. It was supercharged by a partnership with Microsoft that provided not just billions in cash, but the custom computing infrastructure that made GPT-4 possible. It was built on technology, the transformer, that was invented by their biggest competitor. It was refined by RLHF, a technique that turned a powerful but chaotic language model into the helpful assistant that captured the world's imagination. And it exploded on November 30th, 2022, when a free chat interface with no marketing budget became the fastest-growing consumer application in human history, forced Google into a code red, triggered a global technology arms race, and turned a nonprofit research lab into an $80 billion company. Whether you see OpenAI as visionary pioneers who democratized AI, or as a cautionary tale of idealism colliding with the realities of capital, or both, one thing is undeniable. They changed the world, and the story is far from over. Thank you to the deal architect and the model architect for this incredible deep dive. This has been the origin story.